Hi, welcome to the Rittner Floral School in Boston, Mass. I'm Dr. Steve Rittner, and it's a pleasure to welcome you into one of our classrooms today. We've got a neat video demonstration for you. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Now, I know I say that all the time, but I mean it. I really think you are going to have fun with this one. The subject of today's demonstration is going to be gladiolas. Gladiolus, that's correct. Now, I think that glads have really gotten a bad rap. A lot of people, when they see glads, or when they even think of the terminology, automatically think in terms of tribute designing, sympathy designing. But I've got news for you. I think that this flower is pretty amazing. It has some unique qualities, and in fact, whenever we use glads here at Rittner's Floral School in Boston, we generally try to introduce it to many of our classes, not in the form of a tribute design or a sympathy design, but rather in the form of a contemporary design, because you can do some very, very cool things with this. First of all, the thing you notice about glads, they're huge. I mean, you've got this amazing stem. It's absolutely incredible. It's big, it's showy, and that means you can come up with some really cool effects with this particular flower very, very easily. And not only does it come in large size, but it comes in a rainbow of colors. Aren't these gorgeous? I mean, we've got here an orange glad, we've got here a lime green. These are the natural colors. These things come in a rainbow of colors, and you can get them pretty much throughout the year. It is a pretty neat flower. And when you take advantage of some of the unique characteristics besides the size and the color, you can do some very cool things with these. For example, one thing that we can do with glads very, very easily is simply by cutting them. We can cut them down like so. And then we can use glads like this. We can take the glad florets that we have and cut them down even further, like so, to get them into smaller pieces. We can take the sections that have the foliage like this and make use of this if we wanted to, like you see it here. So we could use this, or we can even take some of the leaves, bend them, fold them, and then using some of our florist wire, tie them, and come up with all kinds of really cool effects incorporating them. In other words, this is a flower that you can make use of everything on. You can use the flower, you can use parts of the flower, you can use what's left over in terms of the foliage here as part of your infrastructure on your design, and yes, you can even use some of the leaves by bending them and curling them and doing all kinds of cool things with it. Let me give you an example. I think you're going to really enjoy it. Let's start off with a couple of sections here. And I'm going to deliberately not start with my flower, but rather with the foliage. Notice that by taking my foliage and coming up fairly high with my foliage to begin with, I can come up with a really, really large design fairly quickly and with very, very little pain. Now, don't worry, my viewer, we're not going to forget about the flowers. We're going to use the flowers too. But what I'm doing is I'm going to start with my foliage because that's going to establish some height on my piece. Notice that I have a container here that's a rather weird container. It is a ceramic container, but it almost feels like it's industrial. It's gold, it's got almost like rivets on it. It gives really an interesting effect. And it fits very nice with the fact that although this information could be used throughout the year, it is fall, so I'm deliberately picking a gold container, and I'll use similar colors in terms of my flowers. Now, I can take advantage of the fact that we can break our glads down into smaller pieces. And let's take a glad, place it right here. And notice how that really gives me some height on my flower. I can take the flower itself, which you saw me break down a minute ago, take a smaller piece, place it in here, take a still smaller piece, and give me a second, my viewer, while I'm cutting my stems, and I can cut it down and work it right over here. In other words, notice how I'm gradually coming and shifting down over here with my flower. Now, we can do some other cool things. We can start mixing them. In other words, I can take my green flower that we have, and I can play with the lime green. And so I'm going to do just that. I'm going to take a little piece of my lime green and place it there. And I can come down a little bit further with another little piece of flower. And then we can come up with some really kind of cool effects because I can take my flowers and I can start crisscrossing them. So notice, my viewer, how I'm taking my gladiola and I'm going to take a little section and place it over there. And then I can take, again, one of my florets, work it in here like so. In other words, I can make use very, very effectively of the ability to break these things down to come up with some really, really cool effects. So notice I've got something coming down here and I'm swinging over to one side with my orange glads, and now I can do the exact same thing, taking a lime green and working it down over into this side. So I'm coming up with something rather interesting. I'm crisscrossing. I've got my orange going in this direction, I've got my lime green swinging over here, and now to make the design feel bigger, to make it feel a little more impressive, I'm going to go back and take more of my stems, taking a stem here, taking another stem here. This is why I love this flower. I mean, this is really cool. Every flower should be appreciated based on the kinds of things you can do with it. And in my way of thinking, to just limit your use of gladiolas to a sympathy context is really waste, because you can do all kinds of things. Now I could stop at this point if I wanted to, but wait, there's more. Let's take one of these things. I did make the comment that we could take them, curl them, and come up with some interesting results by taking our flower and curling them. And I've got a ribbon curl there. I shouldn't call it a ribbon curl, it's really a foliage curl. And then a second one right over here, like so. Is that beautiful or what? And it's easy to do. Now, of course, I want to make sure that my mechanics are covered because this is a little bit more contemporary in feeling and in style. I'm going to use some pieces of my moss to cover my mechanics. And notice that I can take small little pieces of sheet moss using some small curved hairpins using my florist wire. I can attach it so that in that way I can cover my mechanics. And I would obviously continue this all the way around so that the entire design is covered very nicely. So what do you think, my viewer? Quick, easy, and fun. That's the Rittner Floral School way. And notice that with only a few glads, I'm crisscrossing my orange here, my lime green over here. I'm making use of the foliage here, the stemming and foliage here, and even making use of the few ribbon loops. And very, very quickly, I can come up with a design that's big, it's showy, and it's really, really easy to do. Now, I like to show you how to do it step by step, but I also like to show you a few more examples. So would you mind, my viewer, if I show you a few more examples of things you can do using the same techniques that you just picked up here? Let me show you. You guys are going to love this. We can take this and we can do all kinds of variations on this. Let me show you working from simple to more complex. Here, for example, is something that I made up just before turning on the video. It's a similar kind of thing. It's even easier. If you think about it, we have a nice piece of ceramic here. We've got a glad here, a second glad here, placed in place, and then taking a piece of the stemming with some of the foliage, placing it over here, another one over here, and then 3 of our curls working in. It's quick, it's easy, it's fun, very contemporary, a couple of our Fujis forming a focal area right here, and then a little bit of moss to cover our mechanics. Something like this is essentially a simple variant on the technique that we showed you in the last design. But wait, there's more. Let me show you, my viewer, a couple of other ways that we can come up with variations on this that I think you will find kind of fun and interesting. Here is a very, very contemporary container. It's kind of like a triangular shaped container. It has our floral foam inside of it, and it's got openings on several sides. So you can see, my viewer, openings on the right side and on the left side, using a very similar technique here. Taking some of our glads, our orange glads, working some down here and over here, and then crisscrossing it with some of our purple glads. A piece over here, a piece over here, a small piece here, and then taking some stemming, working a little stemming here, here, and then a few loops worked in between, covering it in this case with some of our Spanish moss, which will give us a cool effect. Notice, this does not feel like a traditional tribute type design. It's definitely in the contemporary realm, and the use of our gladiolas enables us to come up with some really, really neat effects. Now, let's say you want to come up with something similar to this, but you'd like to vary and use things besides the gladiola. Notice that in our last couple of examples, we used mostly glads, we used a few Fujis, but let me show you how you could come up with something, my viewer, that would give you a similar effect and scale-wise is a little bit bigger and incorporates a couple of other elements into it that you can come up with using, again, similar kinds of technique on this. Here, for example, this one is big. It is a big design. But notice we're using similar technique, a few variants on it. This design is making use of course, a rather interesting contemporary kind of container here. But we've got on the top of our container, we have some foam. We're making use of the gladiolas shooting out here, shooting over here, shooting over here, to give us almost like a triangular effect going in one direction. Taking our aspidistra leaf and then doing the exact same thing that we showed you a second ago in terms of just taking it, curling it, and tying it, placing a few over here, a few over here, a few over here to come up with essentially 3 more points, but doing a crisscross from our glads. So we have our glads going in one direction, our aspidistra leaves in another, and a sunflower in the middle. Again, this kind of design is very, very quick and easy to make, doesn't use a whole lot of material, and it's a lot of fun, and it feels very contemporary with lots of negative space, but there's enough value in it so that it definitely has positive space filled as well. Okay, my viewer, I want to show you one more example that I think you're going to enjoy that will give you, again, a sense of this particular kind of styling that you can come up with. In this particular case, although it's the fall, I decided let's stay with non-fall colors, again, making use of this kind of technique. Once again, taking this, and we've got kind of a very kind of a romantic kind of piece of glass here, and then taking our glads, placing glads coming down here, shooting over here, coming up around here, using our lime green, making our purple coming in here, over here, coming up through the center and over here, and then the use of our stemming used here. We could place the stemming over more if we wanted to, more of the stemming coming out over here and in back to provide a counterbalance to it. Our mechanics here covered, of course, in this particular case, I could use foliage if I wanted to, but in this particular case, once again, because the technique feels a little bit more Chi-Chi contemporary, we're using a little bit of our moss in it. This design is only made using the gladiolas and the gladiola product. So I think you can see, my viewer, we've covered a lot of ground in this presentation. You'll notice that if you have an open mind when it comes to this particular product, if you have an open mind and don't just view it as something that is for very traditional classical designing, and you look at it as something that you can use with not only positive space but negative space, mixing your lines, playing with line within line, shape within shape on these things, and then making use of all parts of the flower, you can come up with some really, really cool things. Quick, easy, and fun, that's the Rittner Floral School way. On behalf of all of us here at Rittner's Floral School, I'm Dr. Steve Rittner. We thank you for coming in and visiting our school today. We hope you enjoyed this demonstration. Keep watching our videos. Visit our webpage at floralschool.com and, of course, our Facebook page as well for many more additional resources. Thank you for coming in and visiting with us today.